Hi everyone! I recorded time-lapse commentary for my Lucigenia modeling time-lapse, and y'all really seem to enjoy that. So I thought, why not continue recording commentary? And even better, if I'm in sharkie form down here. I figured I didn't want to be in the way, so down at the bottom. So today, this is a modeling marathon. I'm modeling 3 different sea dragons here, all 3 species of sea dragons. This is the Weedy Seadragon, or common sea dragon. This is the type of sea dragon that if you saw one in an aquarium, it would probably be this little guy here, the Weedy Seadragon. You can see I started with just a little cube, and I really scaled that in along the x-axis because they have really narrow little bodies, and I want to make sure that I can just start off with sort of the right shape. I really just focus on getting the silhouette, I won't say right, but something. I get the silhouette to be something in the first step. And then I can add a loop cut like I've done here and start focusing on making the shape more 3-dimensional instead of 2-dimensional. You can see right now I'm selecting all of these vertices along the top and the bottom of the sea dragon. I'm just merging all of these vertices at the center using keystroke M, and I just did that because sea dragons are so narrow. They are shockingly narrow animals, and I wanted to just make that angle not severe is the word that comes to mind, but I don't think severe is the right word for such a whimsical creature. Just a bit more defined, I guess. I wanted to dramatize it a bit more. You can see here now I've pulled up a copy of my reference image, my public domain reference image. In case YouTube is listening right now, it is a public domain one. But I just pulled that up, and I'm making some extra loop cuts to add a little bit more detail and just kind of shifting and rotating some of the loop cuts that were already there just to get the right I don't know, to make the shape a little bit more accurate, because these guys are lumpy. They're just lumpier animals than you might expect, and using a reference really helps getting those adjustments just right. So you can see this model actually, normally for my models, I use a little UV sphere for their eyes. It has a very Beanie Baby head empty kind of quality to it, but for these, all of my Seadragon models, I just used, I think a circle, and I went into edit mode, pressed F to fill, and just made a solid kind of shape and used I to inset, and I just made 2 different materials because that's really what their eye looks like. And I tried painting it on later, doesn't work. Needed to be mesh. Okay, so now you can see I'm working on all these little wonderful Weedy Seadragon fins? I think they're fins. I've modeled a lot of sea dragons in the last week, but I think these are called fins. They might be called nodes, possibly. On the Ruby Seadragon, they're called nodes. But yeah, so extruding out all these little fins, this was tricky at first. I think I started with the Weedy Seadragon, couldn't figure out exactly how I wanted to deal with the fins, so I gave up for a while and started my Leafy Seadragon model, which we'll see next. But it ended up being really simple. I added a loop cut usually, and then I would select a face near the top or the bottom where I wanted the fin to start, pressed I to inset, just like I'm doing right now on screen, and then just extruding out from there. You can see I've changed my, I think it's orientation? At the top of the screen, at the top of the viewport, I've changed my orientation from global to normal, and I do have to pause my 360 animation here in the corner that I'm smacking with my tail right now when I use that, when I want to be able to rotate and move things along the normals. I do have to pause that animation for some reason, but I just found that working with the normals orientation instead of global orientation was really helpful for these fins. I don't know, I find the normals orientation for rotations, especially in these little sections that I'm extruding out, it just helped me rotate edge loops without them moving in unexpected directions, if that makes sense. It's the type of thing that I don't know how to explain. You just gotta try it. You just gotta download Blender. Okay, so you can see now I'm moving on down the tail. I've added lots more little pairs of these fins toward the top of the tail, but now just extruding out some simpler little fins, nodes, whichever. Extruding out these little sections. Weedy Seadragons, they have, I think, 2 pairs of fins toward the top of the tail, and then toward the tip of the tail they'll just have a few of these little nodes that just kind of stick out, and they're a little bit simpler. There isn't a pair, it's not symmetrical or anything, it's just one little node cropping out from the tail. And you can see to create those I'm just using keystroke K to turn on the knife tool, adding a couple edges to the mesh that is already there, and then extruding out the faces. And I'm using the exact same approach here on the top of the head to create these little, I don't know if they're fins or they're nodes, I don't know. I kind of think, I like to think of the ones on the top of the head as like little flags, or like, you know, a horse wearing like, I don't know, a fancy little outfit. It'll have a feather on its head, maybe. That's what I kind of think of with these sea dragons. They have a fancy little feather on the top of their head, like they're a fancy little horse. But they're not seahorses, they're sea dragons, so I don't know. Okay, making some little adjustments here, and I've pretty much got the base mesh done, and I'm really happy with it at this point. Some minor adjustments to the color. Some questionable color choices for a moment there. And now everyone's favorite part, UV unwrapping. So you can see I like to toggle into wireframe view. I think that's, what is that, keystroke X or W? I can't remember when I don't have Blender open, but I like to use wireframe view just like this. It's a bit more high contrast, and I just find it a lot easier to see all of the seams that I'm marking with this viewport shading. And for all of these, all of the fin and node sections, I'm really just sectioning them off from the rest of the body. I know that, oh, you can see me section off the eye because I'm going to try and texture paint the eye on. It's a mistake, don't do it. But I gave it a try. But I was saying with the fins, node sections, I'm really just sectioning them off because I know, or I knew before I started the texture painting, that I really just wanted those sections to be mostly a different color from the actual body. Like you can see I've marked seams around some edge loops on the body where I know I'm gonna want some little details here and there, like along the neck. You can see in the reference photos they have these beautiful little blue stripes along their chest. There's also some red along the neck and chest under those blue stripes. You'll see when I start texture painting, but that didn't work out for me. It looked like a gash or a mortal wound, so I went a different direction. I didn't use the red brush strokes, I just added simple little blue stripes on their neck area. Adding some more seams here so I can paint the little open mouth of the sea dragon here. And chaotically arranging my UV map, as always. Okay, opening another window here. This is the image editor. I like to have the image editor open as well as the UV editor when I'm texture painting, just in case I want to paint some details onto the UV map instead of painting directly onto the model like I'm doing most of the time, like you can see in the main viewport here in the middle. Now I'm sectioning off the snoot section, scientific term. I'm sectioning off the snoot here and just painting it blue. My favorite part. This little trumpet mouth. And adding some little brush strokes with a couple different brush sizes. It's all symmetrical, super simple. But yeah, adding some little details here and there. You can see in the reference photos that they are super spotty and they have lots of different things going on their bodies, but my textures are always much simpler than the real animal, and this is a great example of that. Okay, so if they're fins, you can kind of see it in the reference photos. All of their fins, like, they're a darker color than the main body, and the center of the main part of the fin, right here where I'm insetting faces, that's usually a lighter color than the rest of the actual fin. So originally my instinct is always to just, you know, texture paint right onto the model, and I tried hand painting these lighter sections right onto the fins, and it was okay. It wasn't quite right though. It just, I don't know. It was just a little bit too messy. So what I ended up doing, what you just saw there, was I ended up just selecting the faces using keystroke I to inset, and I just used those inset faces, the actual geometry on the model that I created, to determine where the actual texture painting would go. Okay, so now I'm just working with the brush tool here, adding some darker green onto the head, the top of the body, those wonderful blue little stripes, so cute. Yeah, you can see I like to, there's lots of Control Z, lots of undoing in the texture painting stage. I tried a couple different versions of this actual texture painting. This is what I settled on though. I'm really happy with it, and I made stickers of this one, and I think he prints really, really cute, so I'm really happy with this texture. I also, oh wait, more texture painting, whoops. Oh yeah, I tried to add more little spotties like I have on the snoot up here. I tried to add more little spots onto the actual main part of the body like they actually have in real life, but too much detail. Didn't work, didn't translate. Okay, so you can see the fins. They're my favorite detail on these models that I made. All of my Seadragons have these semi-transparent little fins that I just made out of a plain, super simple shape, mirror modifier to apply it to both sides. Super simple. I really like how they turned out. If you're lucky enough to see one of these little guys in an aquarium or in the wild, if you're in, I think, Australia, if you see one of these in an aquarium, you have to look really hard to see their actual fins, because they really are transparent like that, and they just move really fast to propel the Seadragon forward. So here's what the model looked like, and now we can move on to the Leafy Seadragon. I moved over here. It's my first time being a shark on a time lapse, so experimentation going on. I'm in the classic VTuber position now though. Okay, so on to the Leafy Seadragon. So I'm starting with the exact same approach as the Weedy Seadragon in order to model just the basic body. To start, I've just started with a cube, scaled way in along X for that narrow, there I go again, scaling even farther in on X, for that really narrow little Seadragon kind of body shape, and doing the exact same thing to add the eye, which was, in this case, adding a circle to my scene, edit mode, F to fill after selecting all the vertices, and then I will inset that eye to create a little pupil in the middle. Haven't done it yet, but it will happen, I think. I imagine I do the same thing. Okay, so just like last time too, I added a loop cut after I finished the basic silhouette of the Seadragon, and I've just started pulling these vertices and these long edge loops out along X toward the middle of the body and in along X on the along the top and the bottom in order to create this kind of cylindrical shape for the body of our Leafy Seadragon friend here. Let's see. I know it was I struggled a lot with creating the fins of the Leafy Seadragon because they're just like, they're so ornate, and I originally wanted all of them to be kind of uniquely shaped. Like if you look at the reference photos, again, these are public domain reference photos if YouTube is watching. They're all unique. They have their own markings, and it's kind of a similar structure between all of the fins, but still a unique shape to each of them. There's a little bit of nuance. I wanted to do that originally, but it was too much. It was too much detail for a low poly model. It was overwhelming and scary, so I decided to not do that. Okay, so here we are. I'm working on the tail shape a little bit. It was interesting. I tried a lot of different shapes for the tail, specifically on the Leafy Seadragon, because in all the different reference photos that I saw, the tail in a lot of them, like my reference photo here up top, it curls under, and some of the other ones it goes straight out, so had to make some decisions. Okay, so you can see here I've added a plane to my scene, and right now I'm just blocking out a really simple shape for the fins on the Leafy Seadragon. And you can see if you look at the rapidly rotating 360 in the bottom left corner. I had already actually extruded out a set of some fins to begin with, but they just weren't right. So I figured what I would do is sometimes, like if I'm modeling something in 3D, as always, if I'm 3D modeling something and the shape just isn't working, something that I like to do is to just recreate the same shape but as a completely flat plane like I've done now, and I'll just use that shape to kind of block the actual idea that I'm going for, if that makes sense. Like right now I'm just duplicating the same exact fin over and over and over again all the way down the body of this sea dragon. Yeah, you can see I've just made them tiny toward the base of the tail and everything. I'm using the same shape over and over and over again just to give myself an idea of kind of what I want to create, even though I wasn't quite sure exactly how I was going to actually bring that to life as far as topology and extruding these fins out from the actual mesh of the body goes. Sometimes it's just helpful to make a flat version. Just stick it onto the model real flat, real two-dimensional like. It just helps me kind of get an idea of what I'm looking for, what I want to create without getting too bogged down, which happens to me all the time. So you can see I've just duplicated one of these little leaves kind of on this fin here, and I've just duplicated it and moved it around, and I'm just creating a couple different shapes and starting to solidify it. I just selected all of the faces of this leaf and E to extrude it out a more three-dimensional shape, and then I kind of did like a retopology almost. I kept these sort of, they were intended to be just placeholder leaves, just placeholder leaves originally, but I really liked how they looked, so I figured I would just kind of try to recreate that, but by extruding out directly from the actual body of the Leafy Seadragon. I mean, I could have just parented, I could have kept all of the fins, leaves, whatever you want to call them, separate. I could have kept them as separate kind of objects if I wanted to. And I could have just parented them to the body. It doesn't matter that much when I'm designing something like this that is really just intended to be a sticker design. Like, I'm not going to be animating this or anything yet. Who knows? But you know, I don't have animation in mind for any of these models when I'm actually making them at this point, so sometimes it would be okay to take the load, just about really misspoke there. Sometimes it's easier to take the road less traveled and just leave the meshes as separate objects, but I figured that can cause sometimes kind of some problems with the outline modifier that I use, so I figured it would be best to go ahead and just try and keep everything as one continuous shape. So here we are, doing a little bit of low poly retopology. And I just have to select all my faces here on and off to change the material. So we have this nice kind of a minty green almost. I really like my color palettes for the different Seadragons are honestly pretty different. Like the Weedy Seadragon is definitely a bit more, it's just darker, I want to say earth tones, but that seems like it definitely doesn't make sense. They're just a bit darker, I guess. They're a bit richer for all the colors on the Weedy Seadragon that we saw before, and then the Leafy Seadragon here, it's definitely more pastel. I don't know why that is, but it is. And I like how it turned out. Oh, they have this really cute little, like, you can see in the reference photo too, Leafy Seadragons, they seem to have this little horn? I don't know. It looks like a little horn that they have on the top of their head, and I think it is very dear. I think it is very cute. They're like a little unicorn. I just love them. But yeah, so extruding that whole area out, adjusting this eye, moving it around. I learned my lesson with the Weedy Seadragon as far as trying to texture paint the eye directly onto the model. Didn't like that, so just sticking with keeping the eye as a separate little thin mesh here. And I'm doing the exact same thing here as before when I was kind of doing a retopology where I sort of like trace the placeholder mesh that I made that was super flat. Doing the exact same thing here. I'm just using normals orientation, I think. I didn't check between these two voiceovers. I didn't check what it was called, so... but I'm using the normals orientation here for all these rotations and extrusions of the fins that I'm extruding out, and it was just really helpful. It just helps keep everything moving in the direction I expect it to, and that I want it to. Oh, and you can actually see even bigger brain moment here. Instead of doing a retopology where I extrude the fins out from the body, I just took my placeholder fins, because I like the shape so much anyway. I just took the placeholder fins that are flat, selected all the faces, and just pressed E to extrude, and then just connected that sort of solidified fin shape with the body. Super easy. And that way I don't really have to worry about all the rotations and stuff that can move in really weird ways. I just have to add a loop cut here and there to extrude out sort of like a base for the fin. Not sure if that's the right word. But yeah, you can see here I'm just sort of matching up the dimensions of this little extruded area that I extruded out from the body and trying to match that up as best as I can with this fin before I extrude the fin out to solidify it, and then just connecting vertices. Hey, it works. When I do this though, I do have to make sure that I always remember to delete. There'll be an extra face that I just deleted there, an extra face where I connect between the vertices that I've connected. I just have to make sure to delete that or it'll create a really weird outline problem that I don't want that problem to be there, so just gotta get rid of that face. Okay, moving some edge loops around, and again, just matching up the general shape, separating these placeholder fins from the rest of the placeholders, rotating them a bit to get them in sort of the right position before I just scale them out a little bit, solidify them, and connect them right onto the mesh of the body. And like, I don't know, even though I use the exact same placeholder mesh over and over again, you can just make some little adjustments. Like you can change the scale in one direction a little bit and then just grab different segments of that little mesh and just change it up a little bit, and I think it looks great. I think it looks totally fine. Okay, you can see that I selected a whole bunch of the body and I scaled it down. I felt that the body was way too big for the head, and honestly even now I do think the head could be bigger when I look at my model and I look at the reference. I do think the head could be a little bit bigger, but no problem really. He's still cute. I love him. Okay, yeah, and interestingly enough, Leafy Seadragons, this kind of like plumage that they have on the back of the neck here that I'm adding right now, all of their other fins, I think except, well, maybe all the way down the tail, like the Weedy Seadragon that we just watched before had a bunch of pairs of those little fins toward the top of the tail, and once it got toward the tip of the tail, it was just one little node instead of pairs of fins. The Leafy Seadragon, on the other hand, this big fin that they have on the back of their neck, I think it's just one. I looked at a lot of different reference photos, and it always seemed to be just one right on the center and a pair on the top of the head. So I don't know why that is. Maybe it's like their little dorsal fin, like I have. I don't know why that is. I thought it was really interesting, but very pretty. I've never seen a Leafy Seadragon in real life, I think. Apparently, when I was looking for my public domain, YouTube-friendly reference photos, the Monterey Bay Aquarium actually has or had Leafy Seadragons at one point. One of the public domain images that I could find of the Leafy Seadragon was from Monterey Bay Aquarium. They were not there when I visited a couple months ago, but I got to see the giant isopods, so that's okay. Just scaling in, making some adjustments I'm rotating this pair of fins around so I can get it nice and connected to the extrusion that I've made from the body mesh, so I can connect these guys. But yeah, I've never seen the Leafy Seadragon in real life. I've seen lots of Weedy Seadragons at different aquariums. I think Aquarium of the Pacific has them. I think the New England Aquarium has them. I think they're pretty common at aquariums, and they're so beautiful. They're amazing. But I've never seen a Leafy Seadragon. If you get to see one at an aquarium, you're super lucky. I'm jealous of you. But yeah, I read a while back that I think it's either only one breeding pair or only 2 males are allowed to be taken from the wild in Australia every year for display and research and stuff, so there's not a lot of them in aquariums. Okay, I kept making some little adjustments here before I add his little fancy feather on top of the head that I love so much. It's my favorite bit of their, like, plumage, whatever you want to call it. I think it's just beautiful. And making some little adjustments here to this fin before I extrude it out. I was just kind of, you could see I was selecting each of the 3 little leaf segments and kind of moving it downwards, just because when I originally made the placeholder fin, it was for, I think it was for the fins on the bottom of the body, so all of the leaf segments kind of pointed down like they actually would. And that looks strange when you flip it over and use it on the top. They point, like you can see in all these pairs of these placeholder fins, you can see all of the segments kind of point upward instead of downward, and I don't know, I found that unsettling. It just didn't quite make sense. I felt like they should kind of point down, like they're being weighed down in the water a little bit, so minor adjustments to make here and there, but I love this approach. I love when I can just duplicate the same thing over and over again. It's great. Okay. Lots and lots of duplicating these little guys. The tail was interesting because it was hard because the tail gets so thin toward the very end. It's so long, but there are all of those little leafy fin segments still, and it was really hard to find a way to make them get progressively smaller toward the tip of the tail without totally losing any idea what you might be looking at, because they just got so tiny. But that's okay. It's a challenge I'm willing to take on in the name of Leafy Seadragons. If you like today's music, we are listening to an album by the ever wonderful Stevia Sphere. She's great. You can find her on Bandcamp. I will link this album in the description. I don't know what to say here. It's just more of the same. It's just lots more duplicating these little guys and rotating them around. I wish I had a good Leafy Seadragon story right now, but I don't. Okay, adjusting these little fins again to get them pointing downward. I'm starting to lose my voice. I don't know if you can hear it on the mic, but I'm definitely starting to lose my voice already. I think I've been recording commentary for like, I don't know, 20 minutes. Why is my voice going completely out? I did think a lot about when I was going to be texture painting, like the texture painting on all of the fins on the Weedy Seadragon was really simple. It was pretty much just insetting faces, and the actual texture was pretty much just what the actual geometry dictated. But with the Leafy Seadragon we have here, their coloring on their fins, it really imitates the way that kelp looks. It's interesting too, like the 2 reference photos that I have there, the one on the top, the spots really look like kelp, and the spots on the one on the bottom, no offense to the Leafy Seadragon on the bottom, but I don't know, the little spots kind of look like mold. I don't know. I think it's just the lighting differences, the differences in the lighting condition between these 2 photos. But it's interesting how different they can actually look. But when I ended up actually texture painting these, I just decided to mostly keep to solid colors for pretty much this whole Seadragon. I think really the only texture painting that I actually did on this little guy was, I'm thinking and remembering. Oh, the only texture painting that I really did on this model was really just on the sides. Like you can kind of see, I don't know how well you can see in the reference photos that are on the left. You can kind of see that they have these little white stripes along the sides of their body, and they have the same white stripes all along their head and all the way down the snoot. And the white stripes actually, even the markings that they have on their face, it seems like they continue across their eye, actually, which I don't know how all that works, but it's really beautiful. I admire it very much. But for this model, the only texture painting I ended up doing was just those kind of white stripes along the sides of the body, because as much as I love the coloration of the Leafy Seadragon's fins and the way it imitates the look of actual kelp forests, it's one of those things where I think it would have been too much detail maybe for a texture on a low poly model. I think it would have made him too camouflaged, perhaps. I think it would have just made it a bit difficult to immediately tell what you're actually looking at. It makes it a little bit too difficult to immediately recognize animal, you know? So I decided to just keep solid colors when I texture painted all of these fins, but I really like how it turned out. Not that I've done that yet in the time lapse, but spoiler alert, you know now. Okay, making some tiny little adjustments with circle select, which you can activate using keystroke C. Super helpful when I just want to grab tons and tons of vertices all at once. And now I'm adding a wonderful little fin onto my Leafy Seadragon, just like I did on the Weedy Seadragon. I'm just starting with a plane and creating a semi-transparent sort of material using a transparent BSDF, an emission shader, and a mix shader. Super simple, works like a charm. Can't get enough. And doing the exact same thing, I'll use just the same material for the fins along their little faces, and those are my favorite detail on these models. I just love how it looks. Okay, so if I were a betting shark, I would bet that, okay, I was about to say that I would bet we're about to start UV unwrapping, and that is not what happened. So the next thing you can see me doing here is I start extruding out these little spikes that the Leafy Seadragon has along their backs, and they also have spikes along their underside. You can see in those reference photos, they are just like one of the most ornate sea creatures. They're just beautiful. I just love them. But you can see here on the top, I'm extruding symmetrical pairs of spikes because, as far as I could tell, along the Leafy Seadragon's back, they have symmetrical pairs of spikes along the back for some reason. But for some reason, the spikes along their underside, along the bottom of the neck, along the belly, it's just one, not a pair. I don't know why, but that's how they are. And you can see I use the knife tool here to start extruding them out directly from the mesh. A wonderful idea, a wonderful thought, but I was very tired by this point, and I decided to delete all of that and simply model a little spike out of a cube, copy the materials, and just snap it into place. And it's totally fine for a sticker design. Works like a charm, saves time. Look how cute. Wonderful creature. Okay, so now, oh, here we go. UV unwrapping, here we go. It's all happening. I am, again, going to section off the eye area, it looks like, because I guess I didn't learn my lesson last time. I might try and paint the eye on again here. This UV, I don't think I hardly marked any seams at all on this model. Again, I'm just sectioning off each of these pairs of fins, just because I know I want those to be a solid color probably. And then, yeah, I really just sectioned off, I really just made sure that I could section off the face for some detail, for some of those little white face markings, just like on the sides of their bodies. And then I sectioned off the sides of the bodies as well for that. You can see I'm just making some last minute little adjustments to these fins to just kind of get the shape hopefully exactly where I want it. And just doing a really simple UV unwrap here. Really all I had to worry about for texture painting was the sides of the face and the body, so super simple. Doesn't get better than that. Look at that UV map go. Crazy things happening up there. Okay, got a UV map, and I'm gonna make a quick extra material here where I can add the texture that I've just created in the UV editor. So what I paint will show up directly on my model, and I of course open up an image editor just in case I want to paint directly onto the UV map instead of onto the model. But I'm gonna paint directly onto the model and not the UV map, so. And yeah, this is a really simple little texture paint, just painting these little sets of stripes, little sets of stripes all along the side of the body. I'll add some to the face here in a second. I think even to get this color, it might just be, it looks like, I think what I did was probably select the actual yellow color of the rest of the body and then just lightened it up a whole lot and made it maybe not completely opaque. And you can see here, I'm gonna go back in to the viewport here. I'm going to go back into edit mode. I'm going to mark just a couple more seams, and I'm going to change a little bit of how these fins actually look. They looked a little bit too blocky for my shape. Blocky is great in low poly, but sometimes things can be a little bit too blocky. So I just wanted to create a little bit of variety in the shape and give kind of the impression of these stalks forming a little bit more organically, perhaps? Is the right word? A little bit more organically from the body. You can see I'm just kind of creating a tapered shape, and I think that just, it's a little change, but it adds a little bit more fluidity, we'll say. That sounds like a good word. That sounds like the right word here. And then I think, yeah, I'm adding a couple more seams here. I think what I did was I decided to go ahead and unwrap the side of the tail as well, because I could see these stripes aren't that visible, but it bothered me that Leafy Seadragons have stripes all the way down their tail, and I hadn't done that originally. So going back, rectifying my mistakes against the Leafy Seadragon, and just adding a little bit more tapered shapes, adding, I add kind of like more yellow to the very base of all those fins again, so it just looks like it's really actually growing out of the Leafy Seadragon's body, as opposed to what I had considered doing before, just I don't know, just kind of sticking them on there without being a continuous mesh. But yeah, I think just adding that little pop of yellow at the bottom of the fin really just gives the impression that these fins are actually part of our wonderful Leafy Seadragon here, and I really love how this model turned out. I was extremely intimidated before I started it, so super happy with how it turned out. And now we can move on to the last star of the show today, the Crimsons, or nope, that's not what it's called. It's called a Ruby Seadragon. Okay, I love this creature so much. You can see it was really hard to find public domain reference photos for this one. Actually, these reference photos aren't public domain. They are Creative Commons attribution license or something. I just have to credit the photographer in my description, so if you would like to find the sources, they're all there. But the Ruby Seadragon is so cool because this little guy, he is the third species of sea dragon, and I think it was something like the first new species of sea dragon discovered in like 150 years or something. I think they were discovered in 2015, and originally they were only discovered through specimens that had washed up on shore, sadly. That's how they were actually identified as a completely different species species. And you can even see in that reference photo I have up there, you can see I mentioned way earlier when I was talking during the Weedy Seadragon modeling portion, I think. I was talking about they have these fins on their backs, Leafy and Weedy Seadragons. I couldn't remember if they were actually called fins or nodes, but on the Ruby Seadragon here, they are called nodes, because you can actually see, if you look at that reference photo near the hump on the back, you can see one on the back and the neck, you can see another one, and there's a few little tiny ones on the underside of the Ruby Seadragon where you would expect to see fins, like on the Leafy or the Weedy Seadragon. They just have these little circular kind of nodules. They're symmetrical, there's 2 on each side of the body. But yeah, they don't have actual fins, they just have those circular little nodules, and I think that's really interesting. It seems like we don't know a whole lot about the Ruby Seadragon because I think they've only been observed living in the wild once. And I can link the video about them from National Geographic in the description, but I think they were discovered by looking at specimens, and then the researcher that discovered it, she coordinated like an expedition to go try and find them in the wild, and miraculously they did actually manage to find one in the wild, alive and well, and he was super cute, just floating around, not really doing anything, just like sea dragons and seahorses like to do. They just love to just kind of float there. But yeah, they're really cool. I highly recommend watching that video. They're really interesting. This deep red color that they have, that they get their name from, I think I read it's thought that they are red because they live much deeper in the ocean. They live at a much greater depth than the Leafy or the Weedy Seadragon, and red is it? I think it's the best absorbed wavelength of light. Deeper in the ocean, something like that. I don't quite remember, but there's a reason, and it's because they live real deep. But yeah, so this model, I mean, you know, I start with a cube just like always, make it super narrow, add a loop cut, start shaping everything out using the edges on the sides and toward the top and the bottom, just to create some depth. And then I just extruded out these little nodes, and this guy was really simple. No complicated fins, no leafy fins like the Leafy or Weedy Seadragon, so really it was quite simple. And I was kind of paranoid, maybe I would say, with the texture painting, because I was scared, like the red color, I don't know, he looks a little, I was scared he would look scary, I don't know, I was scared he would look a bit frightening, so I was a little bit scared to add too much detail with the texture painting. Like you can see that they kind of, like when they're observed underwater, they're more of a greenish red, so I don't know, I didn't want to get too crazy with it, so I just added a couple of those little kind of ribbing sort of markings to his belly area, and I made the tips of the nodes a little bit darker, and then here we have the finished Ruby Seadragon. But yeah, that is all for this Seadragon modeling marathon. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much. I appreciate you very much. And yeah, let me know if y'all enjoy this type of video where I do commentary like this, especially as a shark. Yeah, thank you all of these wonderful Sneepsnorp Club members. I appreciate and love you all so very dearly. Y'all's support is really the reason that I get to do this stuff, and if I didn't have y'all, I would be, I don't know, modeling in silence in the dark somewhere and not speaking about it as a little shark right now. So thank you for all your support and everything you do. Yep.